You know, they say, it has been said, that every American over 18 years of age has broken some law because there's so many of them. In one 10-year period of time, Congress will add 500 new crimes to the federal code. Well, there's been a protest in the African-American community, the Hispanic community, and other people, and certainly on this program, we've been shouting about the fact that we're becoming a nation of criminals. Well, Washington has finally created something to deal with this matter. They have established a task force to check on the criminal code to see if it can't be reformed.
Well, our John Jessup is going to bring us up to date on the situation. John?
Aggravated battery.
America's criminal code is enormous, with 4,500 crimes on the books and growing by as much as 500 new crimes each decade. That means ordinary Americans can face fines and even prison time for crimes they don't even know they're committing. Critics call the code outdated and out of control. That's why Congress wants a bipartisan task force to investigate this over-criminalization. Virginia Congressman Bobby Scott will be the ranking Democrat on the panel.
The past 20 or 30 years, the number of people in jails and prisons in America has gone up almost tenfold because every time you turn around, there are new laws.
In 2003, federal agents raided and ransacked the home of Texas retiree George Norris and his wife Kathy. George spent a year and a half in federal prison, charged with selling orchids that the government thought were endangered. After being convicted on a paperwork violation, he suffered declining health and had to spend their entire savings fighting the charges.
The country that I grew up in was not like this. And I've lost the country I love. And I don't know how to help get it back.
Analyst Paul Larkin saw this abuse as a Department of Justice attorney and a criminal enforcement agent at the EPA.
Only when the public gets outraged about this will something happen. Only then will you see prosecutors not prosecute these cases. Only then will you see Congress not pass any more laws.
Even with the partisan divide in Washington, this effort may actually get somewhere. Groups as diverse as the Conservative Heritage Foundation, the liberal ACLU, and the Libertarian Cato Institute all support reform of the federal criminal code. And the panel will no doubt hear many more stories of victims of a government wielding too much prosecuting power against its citizens. John Jessup, CBN News.
Well, we applaud that initiative, and I want to introduce to you now Wisconsin Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner, who's going to lead the task force, and he's joining us right now. Congressman, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I'm so delighted about this task force. I hope it's very successful.
Well, I am too, and I share your hope. I've had bills reforming the criminal code in for the last several Congresses, and I think we finally struck pay dirt in having a task force that will have no other job but to try to put some sense in the criminal code, and we've got 6 months to do it, and I think we'll be able to do it.
You know, that's a monumental task in 6 months. I mean, are you just going to say, look, some of these things we're just going to strike off the books, or are you going to go statute by statute? There are several thousand of them.
Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to do it issue by issue. For example, there are several different standards of criminal intent depending upon what the crime is. And this is something where either you have it or you don't, and we ought to get one standard of criminal intent. The second thing we're going to look at is unnecessary criminal laws. And the third thing we're going to look at is where state and local police would be better able to enforce the law rather than making it a federal case and having the FBI involved. I think the FBI has got much better things to do, for example, and investigates an 11-year-old girl that ended up having to pay a $500 criminal fine because she found a injured woodpecker and put it in a cage to make sure that the bird was okay. Then that violated the Migratory Bird Act.
Are you serious? I mean, that really happened?
It did.
It's too bizarre to even contemplate. They prosecuted that child for trying to help an injured bird?
Right.
Well, what are you going to do about all the regulations? I understand that there are thousands of them that the regulatory agencies have put criminal sanctions on top of some of their rules. Can the president, by an executive order, could just strike those things down if he wanted to? What do you think?
Well, I think the Congress is going to have to look at regulations, because when criminal authority was given to executive branch agencies, a lot of that was done by committees other than the Judiciary Committee, where we've got some real expertise. What is a proper federal crime and what type of criminal intent is required. So it's our hope that we'll be able to get all of the ones that remain put into Title 18, which is the federal criminal code, so at least people will be able to look at one chapter of the U.S. code to find out what's criminal and what isn't.
You know, there's been a discussion of just recently, as a matter of fact, about judges and sentencing. Are you going to deal with that? I mean, these so-called minimum mandatory sentences?
Well, we may and we may not. It depends upon how controversial it is. I have favored mandatory minimum sentences as a way of getting around judge hopping, because there are some federal judges that have reputation of being hanging judges and others that have reputations of being lenient judges. And it seems to me that if you're convicted of the same crime, you should serve the same time rather than it being the attitude of the judge that happens to preside over your case. So I guess I can say the burden is going to be on people who object to mandatory minimums to come up with a way to end this disparity of sentencing depending upon what judge gets assigned to the case.
6 months to me, it seems an incredibly short length of time. But if you complete your work in 6 months, what happens then? Is the Senate going to have to do a similar committee, or are they just going to go to conference, or how are you handling it?
Oh, when we did the Voting Rights Act renewal, the Senate didn't want to spend the time doing it, and they huffed and puffed and complained about how complicated this was, and then Ranking Member Conyers and I had to go over there with our 12,000 pages of testimony and exhibits and give it to them, and they took due notice of it and got the easy way out. I think the same thing is going to happen. There's a bigger divide between the House and the Senate than there is between the Republicans and the Democrats. And I give you a lot of credit that you're actually giving some publicity to something that is bipartisan and hopefully not very controversial in the end.
Well, it sounds like it's bipartisan. It's left and right all the way, because it makes a lot of sense. How can the American people help your work? Because I think it's critical what you're doing. What would you like them to do?
Well, I think that they ought to talk to their own congressman or congresswoman, and maybe even the senators, if they can find and track down the senators, to actually support the work of this task force. And the reason I say that, rather than saying, well, the task force ought to do this or shouldn't do that, is that I think all of us on the task force have an open mind, and we need some support as individuals, because we are going to be wading into things that have the potential of being very controversial. I think uniformity and clarity in the federal criminal code should be the #1 goal of this task force, and to determine how the role of federalism should work. There are a lot of people that get frustrated about the fact that the states don't do enough in a certain area, so they come to Congress to make it a federal crime. Well, not everything should be a federal crime, and I think if the local district attorneys and sheriffs don't do their job, then it's up to the voters of those counties to tell them to go do their job or find somebody else in the next election.
I applaud you what you're doing, Congressman. Thank you very much. I wish you the best, and if we can help along the way, don't hesitate to call. All right.
Oh, we're going to need a lot of help and a lot of prayers on this one. I can guarantee you that.
Well, you'll have them from us. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.